Yesterday, a federal court allowed the state of Alabama to begin enforcing a ban on performing permanent so called gender transition surgeries on minors. A three-judge panel of the Atlanta-based 11th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals sided with the state of Alabama over objections from a group of transgender minors and their parents who argued that the state law violated the 14th Amendment. Well, the three-judge panel repeatedly cited the U.S. Supreme Court's decision in its Dobbs case from last year, and with the court finding that there was no deeply rooted right to the use of medications in the nation's history. Well, joining me now by phone to discuss this big news is Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall. Attorney General Marshall, welcome back to Washington Watch. Great to have you, sir.
Thank you, Jody, and I appreciate you highlighting this issue.
Well, it's a big issue. It's a big deal. This is a huge victory, obviously, for the state of Alabama, but this is a big victory for children and for the country as a whole. Let's begin by giving us the legal reasoning, the underpinning, if you will, of this 11th Court of Appeals, the 11th Circuit's decision.
Jody, I think you highlighted one of the important things, which is this really is an extension of what the Supreme Court recognized in Dobbs, and that is that state legislatures have the opportunity to be able to weigh in on medical issues involving their state. Clearly, the 11th Circuit opinion said there's no substantive right for parents to be able to choose experimental treatment for their children. And when we saw the Alabama legislature, along with now significant other states around our country doing the same thing, weighing in to say that we're not going to allow a failed European experiment be used against our kids in our respective states. We think this is not only a tremendous victory for the rule of law, but most importantly in being able to protect children who can receive critical care absent these experimental treatments.
Well, it really is huge, and that's why we wanted to highlight it here. It's amazing to me, Attorney General, how news like this is swept under the rug by so much of the mainstream media, but it is groundbreaking decisions. This is a huge victory for children and parents in our country across the board. And you have organizations like the SPLC and the Human Rights Campaign. These type of organizations are representing the plaintiffs in this case. But what does this decision mean on a practical level specifically for Alabama, but even beyond?
Yeah, and Joe, let's not forget that the Department of Justice has weighed in again, and this is, again, part of the Biden's radical transgender movement that they have pushed during this administration. But, for Alabama kids, what it means is that we're going to ensure that they're not receiving medications the FDA has not approved for the purpose in which it's being offered right now. It's going to allow for there to be viable and alternative means to be able to treat gender dysphoria that doesn't create the same risk that they would have currently with the experimental treatment that's being used. But also outside of Alabama itself, we've got hearings coming up involving laws in Kentucky and Tennessee. We have an Arkansas law that is currently pending. We have Indiana, who has their law that's being challenged and being heard in courts here soon. And so the 11th Circuit speaking in this case, just as we had recently the 6th Circuit as well, I think is sending a very strong message to states around the country that you have the ability and the authority to weigh in on this issue, and you need to weigh in on behalf of the children that you're trying to protect.
Well, and it amplifies the power and the importance of states to push back on some of these horrible things that are happening from the federal government and the push for this. You mentioned multiple states just moments ago who were involved in this type of thing. So my question is, where is all this leading? Do you think at some point with all these various states passing laws to protect children, is it inevitable that one of these eventually is going to go to the Supreme Court?
I think it's clear that is an option, particularly if there remains a circuit split. But one thing, Jody, that I think I'm excited about for Alabama is that we're going to have an opportunity to really be able to expose the lies around the international organizations that have propounded this type of treatment that Europe has rejected as should be the standard of care in our country. And so We look forward to continuing the work that we're doing in our litigation, proud of the team that we put together. Because when you have organizations like WPATH that are masquerading as scientific organizations that are truly advocacy organizations for the transgender movement, then we have the opportunity now to put that under the crucible of litigation and make people swear under oath, and to be able to expose what Europe already knows, and to be able to reveal that in our country, that this is not the direction we need to be going with healthcare.
And this is not something just Europe knows. I mean, any reasonable person understands this is bad policy. It's bad idea. It's bad science. It is not health care. It is on every way. It's irreversible to these children. And it's just stunning that we even are finding ourselves in the middle of this debate. One thing that is happening across the country is a lot of pushback when individuals like you, states like Alabama, stand up for children's rights. Are you now, or do you expect pushback against this law?
Oh, I think clearly we've seen it before, and we're going to continue to see it. When you have groups like ACLU, SPLC, and others that really advance an argument that frankly is not grounded in true science and at least appropriate science. But I think the other thing that hopefully is going to come from this is parents having the opportunity to truly understand what this is about, because parents depend on doctors, they depend on physicians to give them good advice. The more we can expose the fallacy of what's going on here, and in fact, the real danger that children are exposed to, then we're going to give parents the opportunity to make good decisions as well.
Yeah, and it's stunning how so many different places are trying to push parents out of even having a decision in this, beginning in schools, different places across the country. And listen, it takes tremendous courage for individuals like you, leaders like you, to stand up at moments like this in our country. And so I just want to extend to you, Attorney General Steve Marshall, a huge thank you for all that you've done, and may just the good hand of God be upon you as you go forward.
We appreciate it, and we're going to continue that fight.